I've never considered myself a sentimental woman. Sentiment is for those who can't face the truth. But lately, these 240 square meters, which I once called a cozy family nest, have begun to weigh on me with their emptiness. Footsteps echoed on the hardwood floors that had cost us a fortune, or rather, our joint fortune, though I'd always thought my contribution was more substantial. My house in Denton is a testament to my success. A two-story columned building that I restored down to the last board, with a garden that I designed personally. My business, the Elodie Premium Dry Cleaners chain, allowed me to contribute equally to our family life, even though Willard came from a family of hereditary Thorndike landowners. That's not to say I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, unlike Willard. My father only left me one rundown dry cleaner, and that was only because he had no sons. "You're strong, Elodie," he used to say. "You'll make it." I did. Turned his little dry cleaner into a chain of 15 locations across the state. People wondered how you could make a fortune washing other people's clothes, but they just didn't understand the market. Elite service is always at a premium. Willard had never appreciated my business, even though he himself lived on the income from family investments and his salary as a hydraulic engineer. "It's just money, Elodie," he'd say in his low voice, as if I were possessed. Always so arrogant in his modesty. Of course, for a man who had never known what it was to really work, money was just money. His family paid for his education, and I had to work my way through on my own. When we got married, his parents gave us a down payment on a house, a typical gesture of the Thorndikes who didn't think I was good enough for their son without their financial support. I walk over to the living room window and look out at the empty driveway. Once there were 3 cars parked here. Mine, Willard's, and the kids shared one. Now only my Lexus gleams lonely in the sun. Sometimes I can almost hear Quincy starting his first car, Kaylin slamming the door as she returns late at night from another boyfriend. Now they only come over on big holidays, and even then reluctantly. The pictures on the mantle are the only thing that keeps this house alive. I've arranged them chronologically. Here's our wedding to Willard. We were so young and stupid then. Here's the birth of Kaylin, then Quincy, their high school years, college. From there, the photos became more and more formal and sparse. After my divorce from Willard 8 years ago, group shots became almost non-existent. I remember meeting Willard at a charity event. He was so confident, so different from other young men in his restraint. Heir to the Thorndikes, he could have chosen any of the girls who hung around him. But he chose me, the ambitious daughter of a dry cleaner. I guess he was attracted to my independence. I wasn't enamored of his position like the others. I saw him not only as an inheritance, but as a person. At least that's what I thought at the time. I didn't need to check my phone to know the kids hadn't responded to my text from yesterday. Kaylin usually responds a week later with a short, "Sorry, been busy." Quincy at least sends a smiley face, which by his standards is the height of politeness. "I'm just asking how they're doing. The last time we got together was Christmas, and it was a disaster." Quincy spent half the time staring at his phone, and Kaylin asked me the same questions 3 times, like she wasn't listening to the answers. When I made a comment about her new haircut, honestly, she looked like a teenager and she's in her 40s. She just pursed her lips and changed the subject. "Were you at your dad's for Thanksgiving?" I asked then. "Yes," Quincy answered, not looking up from his phone. "And how is his new wife?" I tried to be neutral. "Mom, Violet's been his wife for 6 years." Kaylin sighed. "And she's great. Can't we just talk about something else?" "Sure, great. Violet, who's 8 years younger than me. Violet, who teaches some pointless class at a community college and thinks she's an intellectual. Violet, who sheltered my husband when he decided our marriage was exhausted. I remember the day he left. The children were already living separately. Quincy was 31, working as a surveyor somewhere upstate. Kaylin, 34, had just gotten a promotion at her pharmacy chain. Willard sat at the kitchen table, so proper in his iron shirt. I always made sure he looked proper. "I can't take it anymore, Elodie," he said quietly. "What exactly can't you do?" I remember how angry I was then. "Can't bear to live a normal life? Can't be grateful for everything I do for you?" "This," he pointed his hand at me like I was an exhibit. "I can't go on living like everything I do is wrong. like I'm an eternal debtor in my own home. Is that how you see our family? I couldn't believe my ears. After 36 years of marriage? I'm sorry. He got up from the table. I had already packed. He did. 2 measly bags, as if 36 years could fit in them. When the door closed behind him, I didn't cry. Elodie Thorndike doesn't cry. I was sure he'd be back in a week, 2 at the most. But he didn't. And 6 months later, I found out from Kaylin that he was living with a college coworker, Violet. The phone in my hand vibrates, snapping me out of my memories. The number is unfamiliar, but I always answer the phone. It could be a potential client. Elodie Thorndike speaking. Mrs. Thorndike, this is Barron from First National Bank. I wanted to get the details on your request for a large funds transfer. Oh yes, the check. $2 million, an amount that should show my children that their mother is not only successful, but a generous woman. After all, I'm not young anymore. I'm 67, and it's time to think about inheritance. Why not give some of it away now in my lifetime, especially if it helps me get my family back? Yes, Mr. Barron. I confirmed the amount and the beneficiaries. Good. The check will be ready for your birthday, just like you asked. My birthday is in 2 weeks. I've already sent invitations to Kaylin and Quincy, formal cards with gold embossing. I'm sure they'll come. They have to come. After the bell rings, I make my way to my office, where an antique mahogany secretaire stands. I keep important documents and photos here that I don't want on display. One of them is a picture from 4 years ago, when I met Willard by chance at the supermarket. He had lost weight, grown a beard, and looked happy. It struck me then. He looked happier than he had in the last few years of our marriage. I pull out my phone and try to call Kaylin again. Voicemail. Sure. I try Quincy, same thing. I leave short messages for both of them, reminding them of the birthday. I don't mention the gift. It's supposed to be a surprise. A surprise that will make them realize what a mistake they made in moving away from me. Later, I look through Quincy's social media. Kaylin locked her profile from me after our last fight about her lifestyle. The last picture shows him at some family barbecue. I recognize the backyard of Willard's house. Violet is standing next to the grill, laughing with Kaylin. Willard is hugging some young woman, probably Quincy's new girlfriend. Everyone looks so normal, happy. I close the page. They just don't realize how lucky they are to have me. But they will soon. $2 million for 2 people is not an amount of money to give up. And when they accept that money, it will become a part of my life again. I'll see them more often. Maybe even meet Quincy's new girlfriend. Show Kaylin how to dress at her age. I turn off the light in the study and go into the bedroom. I only use a few rooms in this huge house. The rest stand closed up like museum pieces. Sometimes I think about selling it and buying something smaller. But then I remember Willard saying that this house is too big for us. I won't give him the satisfaction of being right. Before I go to bed, I make a guest list for the birthday party. It's short. Kaylin, Quincy, a couple of business associates, my little sister Audrey, if she can fly in from Chicago. Not much for someone who has lived 67 years. But quality over quantity, as I always told my managers. A check for $2 million would make things right. Money always makes things right. My birthday has always been a special occasion. Even as a child, when my father counted every dime, he found money for a small cake with candles and at least one decent gift. The day Elodie was born should be celebrated, he used to say. This is a tradition I have kept into adulthood. A week before the milestone date, I went to the Azure Spa. A full range of services: massage, wraps, manicure, pedicure, haircut, and coloring. 6 hours of self-care. I deserved it. Looking in the mirror after all the treatments, I noted that I looked at least 10 years younger than my age. That's what good care and genes mean, I said to the beautician, who smiled in agreement, calculating her tips in her mind. From the salon, I drove to Shelburne Boutique to buy a dress for the party. The consultant offered me several options, all elegant, but not old-fashioned. I chose a navy blue dress with a drape that hid the imperfections of my figure. 67 is not an age when you can afford revealing outfits, no matter how good your genes are. Are you celebrating something special? The counselor asked while I was paying. A birthday. The whole family will be there, I answered with a confidence I didn't really feel. How wonderful! Family celebrations are so important. I smiled without commenting. This girl didn't know that for me, family now meant two grown children who were more interested in hanging out with their father and his new wife than with me. Back at home, I checked my to-do list for the remaining days. The catering service confirmed the order. Appetizers, main courses, desserts, all top-notch. The decorator sent sketches of the living room decor. Blue and silver tones, fresh flowers, soft lighting. It had to be perfect. I dialed Kaylin's number. After 4 beeps, it went to voicemail. Kaylin, it's Mom. Just wanted to make sure you got my birthday invitation. Please let me know if you can make it. It's, uh, it's gonna be a big day. I hung up the phone, trying to suppress my irritation. Why should I feel like a petitioner, inviting my own daughter to my birthday party? I had better luck with Quincy. He answered on the second ring. Hey, Mom. Quincy, I'm so glad you answered. I'm calling about my birthday party on Saturday. Yeah, I got the invitation. Listen, I'm not sure I can make it. I've got a project on fire. I might have to work. Saturday? I tried to keep my voice neutral. Yeah, I'm on a deadline. You know how it is. Of course I do. I've been running a business for over 30 years, but I thought my birthday was a special occasion. I have a special surprise for you and Kaylin. There was a pause. I could practically hear him weighing his options. What kind of surprise? If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise, would it? I allowed myself a little playfulness in my voice. But trust me, it's worth your time. All right, I'll try to be there, but no promises. That's all I ask, darling. See you Saturday. After talking to Quincy, I felt a little more confident. The hint of surprise had worked, at least he'd promised to try. Now I had to intrigue Kaylin, but she was stubbornly unresponsive. The day I was born, I woke up early. Despite my age, I still felt that childlike anticipation that comes with special days. Today, everything would change. Today, my children will see that I am not just a demanding mother, but a generous woman willing to share my fortune with them. I spent the morning in quiet chores. I checked the last details with the decorator, met the catering team, and took delivery of flowers. At 11 o'clock, a courier from the bank arrived with an envelope. Inside was a check for $2 million made out to Kaylin and Quincy Thorndike. I put it in an elegant gift box tied with a silver ribbon. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, everything was ready. I put on my new dress, did my makeup and hair. The guests were due at 4. I sat in a chair by the window watching the driveway. I replayed the scene in my head. Kaylin and Quincy coming into the house, hugging me, laughing at some joke. Then I hand them the box, they open it, and their faces light up with surprise and gratitude. Mom, that's too generous, Kaylin says. We don't deserve it, adds Quincy. And I reply, you are my children. You deserve the best. The clock struck 4. My business associates, Lucas Bright and his wife and Fiona Reed, were the first to arrive. We exchanged pleasantries, they handed me gifts, probably something trivial like wine or a scarf, and the conversation turned to business. I answered absent-mindedly, constantly glancing at my watch and at the door. At 5:30, my sister Audrey arrived. She looked tired after the flight from Chicago, but she was genuinely happy to see me. We hadn't seen each other for almost a year. Elodie, you look beautiful. She gave me a hug. Those spa treatments are really worth the money. Thank you, darling. You look good for your age, too. I gave her a critical look. You could dye those gray hairs, though. It makes you look old. Audrey tensed but kept her smile. She's used to mine. Are Kaylin and Quincy here yet? She asked, looking around the room. They're running late, I answered, trying to keep my voice casual. You know, young people always late. I wonder who they inherited, Audrey said quietly. You never let them be late when they lived with you. What do you mean? I was instantly alert. Nothing in particular. I just remembered how you told Quincy off for being 5 minutes late to a family dinner, even though he had an important match. He was 16, and the whole team was counting on him. He should have known priorities. Family is more important than games. I lifted my chin. It wasn't just a match, Elodie. It was a city championship, and college scouts were coming to watch. You knew that. but you insisted on your dinner anyway. He's had plenty of other opportunities to prove himself. I waved it off. Quincy had never been good enough for an athletic scholarship anyway. I was just saving him the disappointment. Audrey shook her head. And remember when Kaylin wanted to go to art school? She was so talented. So what? You can't make a living at art. I steered her in a more practical direction. Now she's a respected pharmacist, not a starving artist. But is she happy? Audrey asked quietly. Happiness is overrated, dear. Stability and respect are what really matter. Audrey looked at me strangely, but remained silent. She knew me too well. We'd grown up in a house where tardiness was not tolerated under any circumstances, and dreams were considered foolishness. The clock struck 5. I checked my phone, no calls, no messages. The guests began exchanging glances. Lucas Bright suggested we start with appetizers, and I agreed, even though I had a lump in my throat. At 6:30, my phone finally vibrated. A message from Kaylin. Happy birthday, Mom. I'm sorry, but I can't make it today. Got an emergency at work. We'll talk next week. Yours, Kay. A minute later came a message from Quincy. Happy birthday, Mom. Sorry I can't make it. I'll call you tomorrow. I stared at the screen, feeling the color rush to my face. An emergency on a Saturday? Both of them at the same time? I didn't believe a word of it. Bad news? Audrey asked, noticing my expression. The kids aren't coming, I answered dryly. Work, you know. Oh, Elodie, I'm so sorry. I saw in her eyes not only sympathy, but also understanding of the situation. Audrey knew about my complicated relationship with the children. She was the only one who dared to tell me the truth about my character. It's okay. I straightened my back. We're having a lovely evening anyway. The party went on, but it was already ruined for me. I mechanically kept up the conversation, laughed at the jokes, thanked him for the gifts. But inside I was seething with rage. How could they do this to me? On my birthday? The guests left around 8 am. It was just Audrey and me. She helped me put the presents away while the catering team took care of the dishes and leftovers. Do you want to talk about it? Audrey asked when we were alone. About what? I pretended not to understand. About the fact that your kids chose not to come to your birthday party. They were busy. Elodie, Audrey sighed. We both know that's not true. Something's been going on between you two for a long time. Maybe it's time to admit. It's time to admit what? I interrupted her abruptly. That my children are ungrateful? That they prefer the company of their father and that woman to mine? That they've forgotten who raised them, who gave them everything? I wanted to say that maybe it's time to recognize my role in this situation. You've always been, demanding. And not just with the kids, but with Willard. I was a good mother. My voice trembled. I gave them the best education, the best clothes, the best opportunities. And this is how they thank me? Elodie, do you remember Kaylin's graduation? Audrey asked quietly. I froze. Of course I remembered. Kaylin was being honored as the best student in her class, but I didn't like her speech, so much gratitude to her friends and teachers, and not a word about my role in her success. You refused to go to the dinner after the ceremony, Audrey continued. Said she embarrassed you. She should have known who she really owed her accomplishments to. She was 17, Elodie. She was a child who was just enjoying life and her successes. So what? That's an excuse for ingratitude? Do you remember when Quincy was in that car accident 2 years ago? It was nothing serious, but he was scared. Of course I remember. I came straight to the hospital. Yes, you did. And the first thing you said when you looked at his wrecked car was, I told you to be careful. Do you know how much it's going to cost to fix it? It was a practical question. He needed to learn from his mistakes. He needed encouragement, not a lecture. Audrey shook her head. Violet had just hugged him then and told him how glad she was that he was okay. You should have seen the way he looked at her. I felt my insides clench. Violet, always Violet. The perfect stepmother, the understanding friend, the model wife. She's just playing a role, I gritted my teeth. I wish she'd tried raising them from diapers, dealing with their whims, their illnesses, their constant demands. It's easy to be good when you come prepared for everything. Audrey remained silent. She knew it was useless to argue with me. Instead, she walked over to the table where my unfinished cup of tea stood and casually picked up the gift box with the check. "What's this?" she asked. "Nothing." I quickly picked up the box. "It's for the kids." It was a surprise. "What kind of surprise?" I hesitated. Part of me wanted to keep it a secret, but another part of me needed someone to appreciate my generosity. "A check for $2 million, I finally said. "I wanted to give them a portion of the inheritance now, in my lifetime." Audrey whistled. "That's, very generous, Elodie." "Yes, it is," I grinned bitterly. "And they didn't even bother to show up to receive it." "Maybe it's not about the money?" Audrey suggested cautiously. "What else would it be about?" I gave her a puzzled look. "Money is about freedom, opportunity, a future. What could be more important? Relationships, love, respect?" I dismissed what she said. "All of those things come with money. When you have financial stability, you can afford the luxury of a good relationship. Don't you remember how we grew up? In constant need, with a father who was always worrying about bills?" "I remember that despite the financial difficulties, there was love in our home," Audrey said quietly. "Dad could be strict, but he never made us feel like we weren't good enough. And you did that with Kaylin and Quincy all the time. And with Willard, too." "What a load of crap!" I was practically screaming. "I just wanted what was best for them. I wanted them to strive for more, to keep going. What's wrong with that?" "Nothing if you didn't make them feel like they never lived up to your expectations. Remember how you reacted when Kaylin scored 98 out of 100 on her exam? You asked, 'Why not 100?' I just knew she could do better. Or when Willard got a promotion, but not as high as you expected. You said, 'I thought you were more ambitious.' On your wedding anniversary, Elodie, you ruined the whole evening. I felt my cheeks burning with anger and embarrassment. These were private moments, and Audrey had no right to use them against me." "That's enough." I stood up. "If you've come to lecture me on my parenting skills, you can leave right away." Audrey shook her head. "I came to support my sister on her birthday, but I can't pretend I don't see what's going on. Your children love you, Elodie, but they can't take constant criticism and manipulation. And today they made a choice. A choice to betray their own mother." I crossed my arms across my chest. "No, the choice to be where they are accepted for who they are, without conditions or expectations." Audrey stood up and picked up her bag. "I should get to the hotel. There's an early flight back to Chicago tomorrow." "You're not staying with me?" I didn't mean for it to sound so pathetic. "I've already booked a room," she smiled softly. "Call me tomorrow, okay?" "Don't bother," I replied coldly. "I can see whose side you've chosen." After Audrey left, I was alone in the empty house. Unused plates, uneaten appetizers, an untouched cake with candles that had never been lit. I grabbed my phone and opened Instagram. The first thing I saw was a picture in a mutual friend's feed. It showed Kaylin and Quincy smiling surrounded by people with glasses of champagne. The caption read, "Congratulations to Willard and Violet on their 7th anniversary. Love conquers all." The photo was posted 2 hours ago. At the same time, my kids were texting me about pressing matters at work. They weren't busy. They just chose to celebrate their dad and that woman's wedding anniversary instead of my birthday. A hot wave of anger swept over me. I threw the phone across the room, not caring if it would break or not. Then I grabbed the gift box, pulled out the check, and stared at it. $2 million. The amount that was supposed to bring my kids back to me. A worthless piece of paper. I almost tore the check up in a fit of rage, but something stopped me. No, I won't let them win. I won't let them think they can abuse me with impunity and prefer the company of this usurper to mine. I carefully put the check back into the envelope and then into the drawer of the secretary. I'll figure out how to use that money. How to teach them a lesson they will never forget. For 3 days, I didn't leave the house after my ruined birthday party. I turned off my phone, pulled the curtains, and sat in the dark, going over everything Audrey had said in my head. Ungrateful, just like my kids. I've done so much for them, and all I get in return is criticism and judgment. Quincy never called the next day, as promised, and Kaylin sent a text message as if we barely knew each other. On the 4th day, I decided enough was enough. Elodie Thorndike is not the kind of person who gives up. If the mountain doesn't go to Muhammad, Muhammad goes to the mountain. I found out where Quincy worked now at Precision Mapping, a surveying firm on the north side of Denton. You could walk into their office without an appointment, which suited me just fine. Surprise was always my favorite tactic. I dressed especially elegantly. A gray Chanel suit. Quincy always said it was my color. Pearl earrings, discreet makeup. I looked flawless. A powerful businesswoman, successful and confident. Let Quincy remember who his mother really is. The precision mapping office was modest but modern. The young woman at the front desk looked at me with polite curiosity. "What can I do for you?" "I'd like to see Quincy Thorndike," I said with a smile. "I'm his mother." The girl blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. "Wait a minute, I'll check if he's there." She picked up the phone, but I stopped her with a gesture. "No, don't. I want to surprise him. Just tell me where his workplace is." She hesitated, but my confident tone worked. "Third floor, office 312. The elevator is at the end of the hallway." I thanked her with a nod and headed for the elevator. As I walked up, I thought about my approach. Not too emotional, but not cold either. Interested, but not intrusive. After all, I'd just come to visit my son, nothing special. Not to mention the birthday right off the bat. Office 312 was a small room with two desks piled with maps and blueprints. Quincy sat at one of them, leaning over a computer. He reminded me so much of Willard when he was younger. The same focused eyes, the same wrinkle between his eyebrows. The resemblance made me squeeze inside. "Quincy." My voice was softer than I'd intended. He flinched and looked up. The look of surprise on his face quickly changed to one of wariness. "Mom? What are you doing here? Does a mother need a special reason to visit her son?" I smiled and walked into the room without waiting for an invitation. I was in the neighborhood on business, so I thought, why not stop by? Quincy glanced at his colleague, who tactfully stood up. "I'll go check on Martinez's calculations," he said, and walked out, closing the door behind him. We were left alone. I looked around the room, noting the Spartan furnishings, no personal photos, just work materials. Quincy had always been like that, a minimalist, unlike his sister, who liked to surround herself with pretty trinkets. "You look good," Quincy said, breaking the awkward silence. "So do you." I sat down in the visitor's chair. "A little tired, but that's understandable. Work, huh?" "Yeah, a lot of projects going on right now." "So many that you couldn't even come to my birthday party?" The words came out of my mouth, though I'd planned to bring it up gradually. Quincy tensed up. "Mom, I already apologized for that. I really had a lot of work to do." I pulled out my phone and opened the picture from Willard and Violet's party. "Yeah, I can see how busy you've been." I turned the screen toward him. "Very, professional party." His face changed. He leaned back in his chair, looking at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. Disappointment? Fatigue? Irritation? "Are you following me on social media?" "Following you?" "No." I put my phone away. "I just happened to see this picture. You all look so, happy." "We were happy," he sighed. "Mom, what do you want me to say?" "The truth would be nice." I crossed my arms over my chest. "Why did you lie to me? Why didn't you just say, 'I'm sorry, Mom, but I'd rather celebrate Dad and his new wife's wedding anniversary instead of your birthday'? At least that would have been honest." "Because I knew you would react this way." His voice grew louder, but he quickly pulled himself together. "Knew you'd turn it into a choice between you and Dad, and it's not." "It isn't?" I raised an eyebrow. "It looks like it. And you made your choice." "Mom, it was their holiday. They have an anniversary once a year. Your birthday is once a year. Unfortunately, the dates coincided. Kaylin and I decided to go to theirs because we were at your birthday party last year and missed their anniversary." "How generous of you!" My voice oozed sarcasm. "And of course, neither of you could have bothered to tell me the truth. Because you would have made exactly the scene you're making right now." He rubbed his temples. "Mom, I'm at work. Can we talk about this some other time?" I could see I was losing. He was shutting me out like he'd done 1,000 times before. I needed a change of tactics. "Of course, darling." I softened my tone. "I didn't mean to upset you. It's just, I had a very special gift for you and Kaylin. Something that would change your lives. He looked at me suspiciously. What kind of gift? A check. I lowered my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. For $2 million. For the two of you. His eyes widened. $2 million? Why? Because you're my children. Because I want to secure your future. I plan to give part of my fortune to you now, while I can see how you manage it. Quincy was silent, considering what he had heard. I could see the struggle on his face. That's very generous, Mother, he said at last. But why now? I'm not getting any younger, dear. I paused, as if gathering my thoughts. I miss our family, the times when we were closer together. Are you trying to buy our attention? His voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. What? No, of course not. I feigned outrage. How can you say that? I just want to make sure you and your sister are financially secure. Mom, I'm 39 years old. I have a stable job, my own home, and investment portfolio. Kaylin's 42, she runs a chain of drugstores. We're both financially secure. But an extra million never hurts, does it? I smiled. Think of what you could do with that kind of money. Expand your home, start your own business, travel the world. With what conditions? I blinked. What do you mean? What conditions come with this gift? His gaze was direct and hard. You never just do anything, Mom. There's always some kind of hook. It hurts me to hear you say that. I put my hand to my heart. Do you really think your mother is that calculating? Yes, he answered without hesitation. I do. Because you always have been. Remember when you bought me a car for graduation? And then you reminded me of that every time I did something you didn't like? I bought you a car and you can't even. He mimicked my tone with frightening accuracy. I felt the color rush to my cheeks. This was different. You were a kid, and you had to learn responsibility. And now? What do you want us to learn now? I realized I was losing control of the conversation. Quincy was always stubborn, always seeing more than I wanted to. No conditions. I tried to make my voice sound sincere. I just hope we can spend more time together, like a family. Without Dad? What? You said like a family. Do you mean without my dad? Because he's family to me, and so is Colleen. And so is Violet, whether you like it or not. I felt my insides boiling, but I kept my composure. Of course, darling. I understand that you have a relationship with your father. It's only natural. I'm just talking about you and me and Kaylin. Quincy sighed and looked at his watch. Mom, I have to get back to work. We can continue this conversation at another time. Sure, honey. I stood up, realizing that the first attempt had failed. Maybe we could have dinner together next week? I'm inviting you. I'll look at my schedule and let you know. He stood up as well. It was his standard way of saying no without an outright refusal. I let him walk me to the elevator, exchanged the obligatory pleasantries, and left, seething with resentment. My own son accused me of manipulation, as if mothers had no right to expect any gratitude from their children. But I wasn't going to give up. If things didn't work out with Quincy, maybe Kaylin would be more receptive. She'd always been more emotional, more vulnerable. I could use that. The next day, I went to the pharmacy where Kaylin worked. Unlike Quincy, she held a management position. She was the regional manager for the Zdrav Farm chain. Her office was in the central pharmacy in Denton's business district. This time, I went a little tricky and called Kaylin's secretary, posing as a representative of a charity. I booked an appointment for 1 o'clock in the afternoon, knowing that this was usually the time when Kaylin was having lunch in her office. When I entered her office, the look of shock on my daughter's face was worth the effort. Mom? She stood up from her desk. What are you doing here? I'm sorry for the deception, dear, I smiled. I just wanted to see you. After what happened on my birthday. Kaylin sighed and gestured for me to sit down. I should have known it would come to this. Her office, unlike Quincy's Spartan office, was filled with life photos on the walls, flowers on the windowsill, colorful accessories on the desk. But looking closer, I noticed that none of the pictures were of me. There were pictures of Willard and Violet, of Quincy and his girlfriend, even of my coworkers, but none with me. I was hoping we could talk, I said, trying not to show how hurt I was by that detail. I tried to call you several times. I've really had a lot of work to do, Mom. She pointed to the stack of papers on the desk. End of the quarter, reports, budget planning, and of course, your father's wedding anniversary. I couldn't resist a stiletto. Kaylin closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering her strength. Yeah, that too. I was going to call and explain, but what? Were you afraid I'd be upset to find out my daughter chose to spend time with the woman who ruined my marriage? Kaylin slapped her palm on the table so suddenly that I flinched. That's exactly why I didn't call. Her voice went up an octave. Because you always dramatize. Violet didn't destroy your marriage, Mom. It was already ruined when she showed up. How can you say that? Your father and I were married for 36 years. Yes, we were. And for the last 10 of those years, you were both unhappy. Dad just had the courage to do something about it. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. I didn't expect her to be so frank. So you're on his side. My voice turned cold. You think he was right to leave his wife after 36 years of marriage for the first girl who looked at him? He didn't leave you, Mom. Kaylin spoke slowly, as if explaining something to a child. He just walked away from a relationship that was making you both miserable. And Violet wasn't the first person he'd met. They'd worked together for 2 years before they started dating. And that was after you two broke up. Of course he told you that, I snorted. And you believed it. Yes, I did, because Dad never lied to me. She looked me straight in the eye. Which I can't say about you. I felt my insides tighten. It was a direct challenge, and I didn't know how to respond. I didn't come here to fight, Kaylin, I said finally. I came to talk about money. The phrase made her tense. What money? The $2 million I was going to give you and Quincy for my birthday. Kaylin looked at me with disbelief. Are you kidding? Not at all. I still have the check. I wanted to give you a present. Give you an opportunity to, I don't know. Maybe Quincy could start his own company and you could start your own pharmacy. Kaylin suddenly laughed, but it wasn't a joyful laugh. Mom, do you really think you can buy us? That we'll line up for your money like it's the only thing that matters? I'm not trying to buy you. I felt my patience wearing thin. I'm trying to help my children. Is that a crime? Help shouldn't come with conditions. It shouldn't be used as leverage for manipulation. What manipulation? I'm just, trying to make us feel guilty for not coming to your birthday party. Trying to make us choose between you and Dad. Trying to punish us for loving Violet. So you do love her. My voice dropped to a whisper. More than you love me. Kaylin sighed and rubbed her forehead. It's not a competition, Mom. We can love you both. The problem isn't Violet or even Dad. The problem is how you treat us. How am I treating you? I felt my anger rising up inside of me. I've given you everything. Education, opportunity, support. And you never let us forget it, Kaylin interrupted. Every gift, every opportunity, every piece of bread you gave us, it all came with a reminder of how much we owed you, how we're not grateful enough, how we constantly disappoint you. That's not true. It is true, Mom. Her voice softened. And deep down inside, you know it. That's why you're here with a check for $2 million. Because money is the only way you know how to express love. I felt a lump go down my throat. It wasn't fair. So unfair. You know what? I stood up, adjusting my purse. Save your psychological tests for someone else. I came here with a genuine desire to help, and all I got in return was ingratitude, as always. Kaylin got up too. Mom, please don't leave like that. I didn't mean to hurt you. It's too late for that. I headed for the door. Enjoy your perfect life with the perfect father and the perfect stepmother. Mom, but I'd already closed the door behind me. In the reception area, Kaylin's secretary gave me a strange look. She must have heard part of our conversation. I squared my shoulders and walked past her with my head held high. Outside, I could barely hold back the tears. Twice rejected by my own children. Twice accused of manipulation when all I was doing was trying to be generous. How do they not understand? Why can't they see how much I've done for them? Kaylin's words echoed in my head. Money is the only way you know how to express love. It was so unfair. I love my children more than anything in the world. I just wanted the best for them. I wanted them to be successful, to be respected, to be well off. And this is how they thanked me. They chose another woman, a woman who never changed their diapers, never sat with them nights when they had a fever, never helped them with their homework, never paid for their college. But I won't let them think they won. I won't let them think they can just cut me out of their lives. I will find a way to show them how wrong they are. I will find a way to make them realize that I mean more to them than they think. After my failed encounters with my children, I felt devastated. Their words kept playing in my head like a broken record. You're trying to buy us. Money is the only way you know how to express love. Unfair, cruel words. I didn't deserve to be treated that way. A month later, on a rainy Tuesday morning, I decided to clean out the attic, an activity I'd been putting off for years. There were boxes of old photographs, children's drawings, school report cards. Perhaps it was time to get rid of this junk. Why keep memories of ungrateful children? The attic was dusty and dark. I turned on the light and opened the window, letting in fresh air and the sounds of rain. The first box I opened contained wedding photos. Me and Willard, so young and hopeful. His parents stood next to us, smiling strainedly. They'd never fully accepted me into the Thorndike family, despite my efforts. You never thought I was good enough, I muttered, looking at their faces. But I proved you wrong. I did prove you wrong. Turned my father's small dry cleaning business into a thriving chain. Became a respected entrepreneur, a member of the Denton Chamber of Commerce. What did Willard do? Contented himself with a position as a hydrologic engineer, turned down promotions if they required relocation or more work hours. Family is more important than career, he said. But what kind of family was that without ambition, without striving for more? The next box contained baby pictures of Kaylin and Quincy. Their first steps, first days at school, sports competitions, music recitals. I never missed these events, always there, cheering them on. Here's a picture of Kaylin receiving an award for the best science project in 8th grade. She was smiling for the camera holding her diploma. I remember that day. Her project was about the effects of different fertilizers on plant growth. An unoriginal topic, but she did it flawlessly as I required. Good, but not great, I told her then. Next time, choose a more challenging topic. The judges like originality. Her smile faded a little, but she nodded. Kaylin was always eager to please me, up until a certain age. And here was Quincy with a soccer ball. He was a good player, but not a star. I always told him he could be better if he practiced more. Your dad was team captain in high school, I reminded him. You should strive to surpass him. I set the photos aside and opened the next box. Here were more recent snapshots. The kids' teenage years, family vacations. I noticed that we smiled less often in these photos, especially Willard. His eyes had lost the sparkle they had in the wedding photos. A phone call interrupted my musings. The number was unfamiliar, but I always answered. It could have been something business-related. Elodie Thorndike speaking. Elodie? It's Margaret Holloway. Remember me? Margaret Holloway. Of course I remembered. Wife of a coworker of Willard's, we used to cross paths at corporate events. After the divorce, we stopped hanging out. Margaret, what a surprise. I tried to sound neutral. To what do I owe the honor? I heard you were selling your business and I thought we could get together. I have an offer. I frowned. I wasn't selling my business and I wasn't planning to. Who started that rumor? I'm afraid you've been misinformed, Margaret. I'm not selling Elodie Premium. Pause on the other end of the line. Oh, I thought, James said he heard from Robert, who was talking to Willard. Willard? My heart skipped a beat. What does Willard have to do with this? He has nothing to do with my business. Of course, I'm sorry. I guess there was a misunderstanding. She sounded embarrassed. Now that I've called, why don't we get together? It's been a while. I hesitated. Margaret had always been closer to Willard than to me. What if this was some kind of trick? Okay, I said finally. Where and when? We agreed to meet at the Lavender Garden Cafe in 2 hours. It was a neutral place, crowded enough that it wouldn't be too intimate. I came down from the loft, showered and changed. Margaret always dressed elegantly, and I didn't want to give in to that. The Lavender Garden was almost empty. The rain had scared away most of the customers. Margaret was already waiting at a table by the window, elegant in her beige suit. Her hair, once dark brown, was now silver, but she looked good for her 60-plus years. "Elodie," she stood up to greet me. "You look beautiful." "You too, Margaret." I sat down across from her. "So, what's this rumor about selling my business?" She was embarrassed. "Really, it was awkward. James must have misunderstood something. He said Willard mentioned some big changes in your life." "Willard doesn't know anything about my life," I cut him off. We hadn't spoken in years. "Of course, it's just," she hesitated. "You know, the kids tell him a lot about you, especially Kaylin. That information took me by surprise. Kaylin tells Willard about me? What kind of things?" "I doubt Kaylin has anything to say. We don't see each other much." I tried to keep my voice casual. "Oh." Margaret looked surprised. "I thought, at James's birthday party last month, Kaylin talked a lot about you. About how you're growing your business, about your plans for retirement." "Retirement plans?" "I didn't have any plans. I never discussed it with Kaylin." "Was Kaylin at James's birthday party?" I asked, feeling the irritation rising inside me. "With Willard and his wife?" "Yes, they were all there." Margaret didn't seem to notice my discomfort. "Willard and Violet, Kaylin and her husband, Quincy and that nice girl. Laura, I think. They looked so happy. Kaylin and her husband? But Kaylin's not married, and Quincy doesn't have a girl named Laura. The last one I knew of was Jenna, and that was 2 years ago." "Margaret," I said slowly, "Kaylin isn't married." Margaret looked confused. "Oh, I thought she was with a man and they looked, maybe it was her boyfriend. Tall, dark-haired, with a beard." I shook my head. "The last boyfriend Kaylin knew of was blonde and worked for a computer company. That was 3 years ago, and they'd broken up after a few months of a relationship." "And Laura?" I asked. "Are you sure Quincy's girlfriend's name is Laura?" "Pretty sure." Margaret frowned. "Though maybe Tara? Something like that. She's a doctor, I think. A very smart girl." "A doctor?" "The last Quincy girl I knew worked as a graphic designer." Suddenly, I realized how little I knew about my children's lives. They never told me about new relationships, never brought their partners to meet me. But Willard and Violet were regular visitors, apparently. "How long had it been since you'd seen them?" I asked, trying to keep my voice casual. "Kaylin and Quincy? A month ago at James's birthday party. I'd seen Quincy last week too, though. He'd stopped by James's house to pick up some paperwork." "And in recent years? Did you see him much?" Margaret thought for a moment. "Quite often. At family events, mostly. Willard and James are still close friends, you know. We often have barbecues, dinner parties. Willard's kids almost always come." "Willard's kids, not our kids. It's like I have nothing to do with them anymore." "What do you think of Violet?" I asked suddenly, unable to contain myself. Margaret smiled slightly. "She's a wonderful woman. Very intelligent, caring. You know, she was so supportive of Willard when he had his health problems last year." "Health problems?" I didn't know anything about that. "What kind of problems?" "Nothing serious in the end. But there was a moment when everyone was worried. Something with his heart, I think. Violet was with him all the time, and the kids, too. They were all so close together. I felt a wave of resentment and anger wash over me. Willard was sick, maybe seriously, and no one had seen fit to tell me? 36 years of marriage, 2 children, and I find out about his health from Margaret Holloway? "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you didn't know," Margaret said, noticing my expression. "I thought the children had told you." Obviously, they didn't think it was any of my business. I couldn't hide the bitterness in my voice. Margaret squirmed uncomfortably in her chair. "You know, Elodie, I've always admired your strength. You're so determined. I knew that compliment would be followed by a but. It's always been that way." "But?" I pushed her. "But sometimes that determination could be overwhelming to others," she said carefully, choosing her words. "Especially for Willard. He'd always been softer, more accommodating." "Are you saying that I was suppressing him?" I felt anger boiling up inside me. "No, not exactly," Margaret sighed. "It's just that your personalities were so different. Remember that corporate event when he was promoted to chief engineer?" I vaguely remembered the event. That was, uh, 15 years ago? Willard was finally promoted after 10 years in the same position. We organized a small reception at the house. Of course I remember. What about him? You made a toast, said something like, the company finally saw what I always knew, that my husband could be successful if he tried. It was awkward. I frowned. I didn't remember the exact words, but I remembered the gist of it. I really thought Willard had been sitting in one place for too long, not taking initiative. I just wanted to cheer him up, I said defensively. He looked destroyed, Elodie. Everyone could see that. It was his moment of triumph, and you diminished his achievement. Nonsense. I just remember when Quincy got that athletic scholarship? You said it was not a real accomplishment because real accomplishments are about academic achievement? That was the moment I remember best. Quincy was so excited to get that scholarship, but I knew that academics would have benefited him more in the long run. I just wanted him to think about the future. I pressed my lips together. An athletic career is unpredictable. But he was so proud of this achievement, Elodie. He practiced to the point of exhaustion to get that scholarship. And the first thing you said was, it's not something to aspire to. I remembered Quincy's face at that moment, how his smile faded, how he nodded and said, yes, Mom, you're right, as always. But later, I heard him crying in his room. I thought then that he was just tired. Now I wasn't so sure. And Kaylin and her art, Margaret continued. She was so talented, Elodie. Everyone said so. Art doesn't feed, I answered automatically. But it might have made her happy, like teaching makes Violet happy. At the mention of Violet, I flinched. What are you trying to say, Margaret? That I was a bad wife? A bad mother? No, of course not. She shook her head. You always wanted the best for them, I know that. It's just, your definition of best wasn't always the same as theirs. And you didn't take their choices very well when they were different from what you had planned for them. I felt tears coming to my throat and it made me angry. Elodie Thorndike doesn't cry in public. Well, thank you for your candor, Margaret. I began to gather my things. But I don't think we have anything more to talk about. Elodie, wait. She put her hand on mine. I didn't mean to upset you. It's just, Quincy mentioned at James's birthday party that you offered him and Kaylin some big money, and that it got him thinking about your relationship. I froze. What exactly did he say? That you've always used money as a means of control, that every gift, every financial aid came with unspoken conditions, and that he didn't want to repeat that pattern now. Control? Unspoken conditions? I was insulted to the core. It's ingratitude, is what it is. I gritted my teeth. I've worked my whole life to give them everything, and this is how they thank me. Gossiping about me with strangers, ignoring me, choosing to side with their father and this woman. Margaret sighed. They didn't choose sides, Elodie. They just chose to be with those who accept them for who they are. No criticism, no conditions. I stood up, feeling the conversation was over. Goodbye, Margaret. I don't think we should meet again. I walked out of the cafe into the rain, not caring that I had forgotten my umbrella. Margaret's words rang in my ears. The control, the criticism, the conditions. It wasn't true. I loved my children. I loved Willard. I just wanted the best for them. Why didn't anyone understand that? At home, I went up to the attic again and continued to sort through boxes. Here's the scrapbook I kept when the kids were little. Their first drawings, their first written work, certificates, diplomas. I flipped through the pages, and suddenly one clipping caught my eye, an article from Quincy's school newspaper. He'd won some kind of literary contest in 8th grade, and I'd saved the article. My Hero, read the title of Quincy's essay. I started reading, My father is my hero, not because he is strong or famous, but because he is kind. He never yells, even when he's angry. He always takes the time to listen to me, even when he is tired after work. He teaches me that being a man doesn't mean being the loudest or the richest. It means being the most reliable, the most honest, the most caring. I remembered reading that essay for the first time. I remembered asking Quincy, why didn't you write about me? Aren't I a hero? Don't I work twice as hard as your father to provide for us? Quincy was embarrassed then and mumbled something about the topic being my hero, not my heroine. But I knew it was an excuse. He had chosen his father over me, and apparently had continued to choose him ever since. I closed the album and put it back in the box. Maybe Margaret was right. Maybe I really was being too demanding, too critical. But is it a crime to want your children and husband to strive for the best? Willard was always too soft on the kids, too easily forgiving their mistakes, too rarely demanding more from them. They're trying hard enough as it is, he'd tell me. They need encouragement, not criticism. But life is cruel. Life doesn't give you support for nothing. I knew this from my own experience. I wanted to prepare my kids for the real world, where no one is going to pat you on the back just for trying. And this is the result. My husband left me for a woman who apparently never demands more from him. My kids would rather spend time with them than me. They are all so happy together, happy in their mediocrity. And I'm left alone, with a business that thrives because of my demanding nature, with a house that is perfect because of my high standards, with a reputation as a successful woman admired by colleagues and competitors, but without a family. Perhaps I should have been more flexible, less critical, more understanding. But wouldn't that have meant lowering my standards? Accepting less? No. Willard stole my family from me, stole my children, turned them against me. It's his fault. Him and that woman, Violet. They created this idyllic picture of a happy family where everyone is accepted for who they are. But it's an illusion. Real life isn't like that. Real life is about striving for more, being better, achieving more. It's not my fault that my children and husband don't realize this. It's not my fault that they chose the path of least resistance. I've done everything right, always. And if they can't appreciate that, that's their problem, not mine. The information about Willard's birthday came to me by accident, through a social media post by one of our mutual friends. Judging by the invitation I saw on the feed, the celebration was to be held the following Saturday at the Pine Hills Country Club. A family event, as indicated, with a request to bring no gifts. Of course, Willard had always been modest. Too modest for a Thorndike heir. Bring no gifts is their usual hypocrisy. In fact, they expect gifts. They just pretend to be above it. I knew I wasn't invited. And I knew the kids would no doubt be there, celebrating with their father and his perfect wife. Perhaps this was my last chance to reach out to them, to make them realize the mistake they were making in pushing their own mother away. The plan formed itself. I would show up at the party. I'll bring a check, the very offer they so recklessly refused. Maybe seeing me there, in the presence of their father and Violet, they'd finally realize I was serious about making things right. I'd made my preparations. I chose an elegant but not flashy outfit, the pale blue dress with the jacket that had always suited me. I had my hair done and my makeup flawless. Wrapped the check in a new gift box, this time silver with a blue ribbon. Pine Hills was a 30-minute drive from Denton. I drove in with plenty of time to spare, not wanting to be late. The parking lot was already full of cars, and I recognized Quincy's SUV and Kaylin's sedan. My heart beat faster. I hadn't seen the two of them together I don't even remember how long. Since last Christmas? Or even before that? The memory of being a family came suddenly and painfully. The party was held on the club's outdoor terrace. Guests were gathered around tables of hors d'oeuvres, music playing softly. I spotted Willard right away, wearing a light summer suit. He stood in the center of the group, smiling at something Violet was saying. She put her hand on his shoulder in a gesture that struck me as possessive. It was as if she was saying to everyone, "He's mine." Next to them stood Kaylin and a young man with a beard, apparently the husband Margaret had spoken of. Quincy was a little ways away with a glass in his hand, talking to a dark-haired woman who must have been Lara or Tara, his new girlfriend. They all seemed so homely together, so connected, so foreign to me. I took a deep breath and headed toward them, clutching the gift box tightly. Quincy noticed me first. I saw his eyes widen as he said something to his girlfriend and hurried in my direction. He wanted to intercept me before I reached the center of the group. I wouldn't let him. "Elodie?" Willard's voice stopped me. He'd noticed me and was now looking at me with undisguised surprise. "What are you doing here?" All heads turned in my direction. I felt the color rush to my face, but I kept my smile. "Willard," I nodded at him. Happy birthday. You weren't invited, Kaylin said, stepping forward. Her voice was quiet but firm. Mom, please don't make a scene. A scene? I raised my eyebrows. I came to wish my children's father a happy birthday. Is that a crime? You know it isn't. Quincy stood next to his sister, forming a sort of protective barrier between me and the other guests. Mom, let's talk somewhere else. Why? I raised my voice, feeling a wave of anger rising inside. Are you afraid I'll spoil the perfect picture of a happy family? That the guests will find out Willard has an ex-wife he left after 36 years of marriage? Elodie. Willard's voice was as calm as ever. I didn't leave you. It was a mutual separation. Amicable? I laughed bitterly. You packed your things and left. No warning, no discussion. After dozens of conversations you refused to hear, he shook his head. Please, not here, not today. Why not today? Today's the perfect day. I picked up the gift box. I have a present for Kaylin and Quincy, the one they skipped out on, choosing my birthday over your anniversary. I nodded toward Violet, who stood a little behind me, clearly feeling awkward. Kaylin stepped forward and took my hand gently. Mom, please, let's talk in private. There's nothing to talk about in private. I yanked my hand away. I want everyone to know how generous your mother is. $2 million is what's in that box. $2 million for my ungrateful children who chose their stepmother over their own mother. There was a heavy silence. The guests stopped talking. The music suddenly seemed too loud in the silence. Elodie, Willard began, but Quincy interrupted him. Enough. His voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. Mom, you can't keep acting like this. You can't buy us. You can't control us with money or guilt or anything else. Control? I felt tears come to my eyes, and I hated myself for that weakness. I'm trying to help you, to give you a future. We have a future, Kaylin said softly. A future of our own that we built ourselves. Without your control, without your criticism, without your impossible standards. All these years, Quincy continued, you've made us feel like we're not good enough. No matter what we did, it was never enough for you. That's not true, I exclaimed. I just wanted you to strive for more. No, Mom, Kaylin shook her head. You wanted us to strive for what you thought was best, without regard for our desires, our dreams, our talents. You were never satisfied with who we were, Quincy added, always wanting to change us, to make us better. I stared at them, not believing my ears. It was all the influence of Willard and that woman. They've turned my children against me. It's him, I pointed a trembling finger at Willard. He turned you against me. Him and her. No, Mom. Kaylin took my hands in hers, looking me straight in the eye. It was you. By your actions, by your words, by your inability to see us for who we are and to love us unconditionally. I yanked my hands away, feeling the anger and resentment overwhelm me. Is that how you see me? Like a monster? Like a wicked stepmother from a fairy tale? We see you as someone who can't admit her mistakes, Quincy said quietly. As someone who always thinks he knows better, who can't allow the thought that maybe he's wrong. I looked at their faces, serious, determined, grown up. When did they become like that? When did they stop being my little children who looked at me with adoration? At that moment, I realized I had lost. They had made their choice, and that choice was not in my favor. They had chosen their soft, compliant father and his smiling wife. They chose the path of least resistance. Okay, I said, feeling strangely calm. If that's what you think, if that's what you choose. I opened the gift box, took out the check, and slowly, defiantly tore it into small pieces. Then I won't impose on you. I threw the scraps of the check on the ground between us, as a symbol of our broken bond. Enjoy your perfect family, I turned to leave, but stopped and added, just remember, when life gets tough, when you need real strength, not softness and acceptance, don't come to me. You've made your choice. I walked away with my head held high, not turning around, though something inside was screaming at me, begging me to stay, to try again. But pride wouldn't let me. Elodie Thorndike does not beg. Never. In the car, I allowed myself a moment of weakness, tears streaming down my face, smearing my carefully applied makeup. But only for a moment. Then I wiped my face, started the car, and drove home to my big, empty house, where no one was waiting for me, but where I was still the mistress of my own destiny. They'll regret their choice. They'll realize that I was right, that the world is cruel, that only the strong survive, that you can't settle for less. And when they do, it will be too late. I won't let them come back. I won't let them think they can reject me and then just come back as if nothing happened. I have a business. I have money. I have a reputation. I don't need them the way they think I need them. I can handle myself. I've always managed on my own. And as for them, well, they made their choice. They chose Willard and Violet. They chose acceptance over striving for the best. And they will live with the consequences of that choice. I didn't lose. I just stepped back to regroup, to come up with a new plan, to find a new way to prove that I was right. I was always right, and they'll realize it sooner or later.